Hollywood. They call it the Dream Factory. It's a place where artists, bend light and shadow to create pure magic on screen. But sometimes, lowers voice, when the Klieg lights shut off and the crew goes home, the shadows, they linger. And Hollywood Dream, well, it becomes a real-life nightmare. A beat. Welcome to Real Crime, the show that explores where Hollywood dreams meet their darkest realities. I'm your host, Claudia. For 22 years, I've been on the inside, behind the cameras, on the sets, part of the machine. I've seen the intoxicating glamour, but I've also seen the grit, the towering egos, and the dangerous compromises made in pursuit of the perfect shot. So, in our first season, Set Tragedies and Industry Crimes, we're pulling back the velvet curtain to expose the stories the studios, the ones they fought to bury. And tonight, we begin with a story that, it literally broke through into another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of shocking negligence. We're going back to the summer of 1982, to the haunted set of Twilight Zone, the movie. It was meant to be this epic anthology film, right? A collaboration between 4 of the era's most exciting directors, and it was produced by the 2 reigning kings of the blockbuster, Steven Spielberg and John Landis. Landis, he was white hot after directing Animal House and The Blues Brothers, so he was helming the movie's opening segment, and it was a gritty, just gut punch of a story about a bitter racist, played by the respected actor Vic Morrow, he's violently transported through time and ultimately finds this flicker of redemption by saving 2 Vietnamese children from the horrors of war. The climax was designed to be this heart-stopping spectacle. Morrow, clutching a child under each arm, would heroically wade across a river while a U.S. Army helicopter roared feet above him. And behind them, a Vietnamese village would just erupt in a wall of fire and explosions. It was ambitious. It was visceral. It was pure Landis. And it was a death sentence. Somber. In the pre-dawn hours of July 23, 1982, on a dusty movie ranch in Valencia, California, that carefully crafted spectacle, it turned into a scene of genuine carnage. The helicopter, a Bell UH-1 Iroquois, the iconic Huey from the Vietnam War, it was flying dangerously low. It was being buffeted by the heat and the concussion from this massive pyrotechnic display. And a special effects mortar exploded. It fired a chunk of debris into the sky. It struck the helicopter's small tail rotor. It disintegrated. The pilot lost all control. The multi-ton machine, it tipped, it spun wildly, and plunged directly onto the 3 figures in the water below. 53-year-old Vic Morrow and 7-year-old Micah Dinh were decapitated by the helicopter's main rotor blades. 6-year-old Renee Hsien-Yee Chen was crushed to death by its landing skid. All 3, they died instantly, on camera. Serious. What went so horribly wrong? In this business, you learn one thing fast. Disasters like this are never a single freak event. No. They are the final link in a chain of bad decisions, ignored warnings, and just runaway ego. On a high-pressure set, the director is often treated as a god, and on this night, the prevailing mantra, "Get the shot, no matter what," was followed with the fervor of a deadly cult. First, let's talk about the children. Micah and Renee, they should never have been on that set. California law was explicitly clear. No child actors could work past 6:30 p.m., and it was unthinkable to have them near live explosives. But Landis wanted the authenticity of a night shoot, so the production hired them off the books, paying their parents cash. They were instructed to hide the children from the fire safety officer on set, the very person meant to protect them. In a moment of just tragic irony, Micah's father, a survivor of the real Vietnam War, had to stand by and watch as the simulated explosions triggered his own traumatic memories. Then there were the warnings, so many warnings. The helicopter pilot, Dorsey Wingo, a decorated Vietnam veteran himself, he knew the stunt was too hot, too close. A fire safety officer voiced his fear that the mortars were too large and would endanger the aircraft. But, according to court testimony, John Landis was a yeller and a screamer, a director who had no time for caution. As the helicopter struggled against the violent updrafts from the pyrotechnics, his voice allegedly crackled over the radio. Not an order to pull back, a demand. Get lower, lower, lower. The crash, well, it resulted in a trial that shook Hollywood to its core. For the first time in history, a film director and his key staff were charged with involuntary manslaughter. The prosecutor argued this was a clear case of criminal negligence. The world watched. But after a grueling 10-month trial, they were all acquitted. The jury concluded it was an unforeseeable accident, not a crime. The industry collectively exhaled, but the story doesn't end with the verdict, because while a court of law found them no guilty, the court of public opinion and a terrified industry knew who was culpable. The Twilight Zone tragedy was a gruesome mirror held up to Hollywood's reckless soul, and the reflection, it was monstrous. It forced a fundamental change. The powerful guilds, the DGA for directors and SAG for actors, they were jolted into action. They created dedicated safety committees. They established 24-hour safety hotlines, empowering even the lowest-ranking crew member to report dangerous conditions without fear of losing their job. And most importantly, they began creating and enforcing the industry-wide safety bulletins. Now, if you're not in the business, this might sound like dry corporate policy, but I'm telling you, from the inside, these bulletins are our 10 commandments. They are written in the blood of Vic, Micah, and Renee. They dictate everything from the use of firearms to flying aircraft near people to the type of artificial smoke that's safe to breathe. Before 1982, these rules were just a patchwork of vague suggestions. After, they became law. The tragedy also radically shifted the power structure on set. The first assistant director, the AD, was formally designated the ultimate authority on safety. So no matter how big a director's ego, no matter how loud they scream, an AD now has the guild-mandated power and legal responsibility to halt any sequence they deem unsafe. The simple phrase, "I'm not comfortable, we're shutting it down," became the most powerful words on a film set. Steven Spielberg, Landis's creative partner on the film, was so profoundly horrified by the incident, he severed his friendship and professional relationship with Landis immediately. He later said, "No movie is worth dying for." A simple, obvious sentiment, right? But in the Hollywood of 1982, that was a revolutionary idea. The crash on the set of Twilight Zone, the movie, was a preventable horror story born from an obsession with a single spectacular shot. 3 lives were sacrificed for a piece of film, but their deaths, in all their senselessness, created a lasting legacy of safety that has protected countless lives in the decades since. It was the moment the Dream Factory was brutally forced to wake up. Now, here's a question we'd like you to think about. The jury found no criminal wrongdoing, but does a legal verdict absolve one of moral responsibility? In an industry fueled by powerful visionaries, where is the line between bold artistic ambition and a dangerous, deadly obsession? Join us next time on Real Crime.